Welcome to this edition of The Road to the AntiChrist. Thank you for tuning in. All right, several things tonight. First, I want to start with possibly, maybe, probably not, but maybe an apology to Candace Owens. It was a couple of weeks ago, I called her out. She was taking her time calling out some Calvary Chapel pastors for some sexual sins without calling out her own Roman Catholic centuries worth of sexual sin. And, of course, I called her out for her hypocrisy. I, scanning through Facebook, and I don't know why. First of all, I'm going to take this headset off. For some reason, I'm getting an echo, and it's driving me crazy. So, I was going through Facebook, and all of a sudden, this has happened twice. This particular man's profile popped up in my newsfeed, and I'm not sure why. I'm not friends with the guy. I would never be friends with the guy. Let me just say that he is a pastor in a small town in Tennessee. Nothing to do with Tennessee. But I don't want to tell you who he is. We'll call him Pastor Greg. And this is not his picture, but, I didn't want to show you his picture because if you don't know who I'm talking about, then I don't want you to know who I'm talking about. Some of you might know who I'm talking about, and I apologize for that, for bringing this up. But this gentleman, we'll give him that much credit, I guess, was a few years ago, many years ago, he was an evangelist to mostly independent Baptist teenagers, youth. And then he separated himself from that group and became, I guess, an independent, non-denominational kind of church in Tennessee. At that time, I spoke to him and said that because he was still continuing his outreach towards the same group of kids that he was reaching as a Baptist. Now he's out of the camp, yet he wants to still reach the same kids. And I called him out on that, and I said, that's not right. That's not fair to the pastors who had you in, who supported you financially and gave you meetings for you to change directions and go in a different direction and leave the independent Baptist camp and still reach these same kids. And anyway, we had a disagreement about that. Of course, he didn't see any problem with it, of course. But that's not the main issue about this man. Is that several years ago, he had a family, but he decided to destroy that family. That's what I say when maybe I owe Candace an apology, but not really. Candace is still a hypocrite for not calling out her own, for number one, even being a part of the Roman Catholic Church, but not calling out the decades and centuries of abuse amongst the Catholic priesthood. But here, I just wanted to say that it's not unique. And she was calling out Calvary Chapel men who I don't know. The only Calvary Chapel men that I know is, and I don't know them, but I know who they are, is Greg Laurie, who, as far as I know, has a spotless reputation. We attended his church in Riverside, California years ago, a couple of times. And also Chuck Smith, who is the founder of the Calvary Chapel movement. We visited his church once just to see what all the hubbub was about. As far as I know, he had a spotless reputation as far as being a family man. Beyond that, I have no idea. But beside the point, here we have a man who was in the Independent Baptist movement. He left it. So to his credit, he left it and destroyed his family. Married, I'm assuming, the woman that he destroyed his family with. And here's the kicker. He was still pastoring the church and didn't miss a beat. It might have bothered some people. If they did, I'm sure they left the church. He didn't care. I'm assuming he didn't care. He was going to go on and pastor the church. The rest of the people, while he's a dynamic speaker, I grant him that. On the issues, he's pretty much right. But he continued on. And, that's, we have that in our camp. We do. And going back to the beginning for my life, when I became a Baptist, that was at Central Baptist Church in Pomona, California, back when Ray Bateman was the pastor. And of course, we didn't know. We were just your average member out of thousands. But towards the end of our time there, I was in the Air Force, and all of a sudden, all these other men that we all knew, like Greg, Kelly? What's his first name? It's not Greg. Jerry Prevost from Anchorage, Alaska, and a few others. They came in and preached, and we're like, wow, it's like every other week there's one of these guys stopping by to preach in the morning. I mean, we really enjoyed it, but we didn't know why. But here's the thing. The staff knew why. The deacons knew why. The top-notch church members knew why. Because the pastor of the church had committed adultery. Instead of asking him to leave immediately, they let him stay in position to help lead the church to pick the next pastor. By the time that happened, we had already left. We had left and gotten out of the service. And so I didn't know that until later. And I'm like, now I was younger. I was experienced as I am today in these kind of things, fortunately. But what do? Well, we went to Hammond, Indiana. I went to First Baptist Church. And of course, towards the end of my stay there, in fact, the very year that I graduated, it all broke out about accusations about the pastor. But those are just accusations that were never proven, really. I'll grant you that. They were never proven. But his son, it was proven. So while I was there, that had happened. His son had gone to a church in Texas. They found out about his immorality. I believe they booted him out of the church there. The people there had the character, the Christian character, to do the right thing. They booted him out. But while I was still there, attending a pastor's school, I heard two men who were not church members of First Baptist, but were there for the pastor's school from out of state, heard them talking with my own ears, and I've said this before, how wonderful that guy was, the son, and they would have no problem having him as their pastor. Now, I was shocked at that. I had heard the accusations. I had heard it from people that knew him personally. while he was still there in Hammond and some of the things that he did there. And, you're just a student. What am I going to do? Am I going to leave? No, I didn't even think about that at the time. So this stuff happens in our camp. So, Candace is pointing out Calvary Chapel, and if it's true, I'm glad that she did. It's horribly wrong. Horribly wrong. But what I see in our camp is that this kind of sin is prevalent right in the church, and nobody seems to do anything about it, nor do they care. Now, move forward a few years. We moved to Las Vegas. And while I was there, when I first moved into town, I took a new job. I went to visit all the independent Baptist churches. One of the ones that I visited, when I got there, it was obvious to me that there was something wrong with the women, the way some of them acted. When that service was over, I ran out the door, literally. I couldn't get out of that place fast enough. Got in my car and was gone. I found out later that the pastor of that church did exactly the same thing as Pastor Greg. He committed adultery, divorced his wife, and then married the same woman that he did commit the adultery with, and stayed in the pulpit, and nobody blinked. The few that did left, no problem. He's still got a crowd. They love him. They like him. It's a little sin, no big deal. Just let's go on and have church. So, Candace, it's not just the Calvary Chapel gang. It's everywhere. But we all know that men are just men, and men are going to sin. We know that. In fact, I'll tell you this. I know another independent Baptist pastor. He been to his church many times here in the state of Arizona. And during our visits, we never saw his wife. Now, we found out that she had some issues of some type. I don't know. But this man saw another lady in the church that he desired. And the story goes is that this woman was also married, but she was having trouble with her husband. And they went to him for counsel. And the story goes, he counseled them to get divorced, which they did. And as soon as they divorced, he told his wife, I'm divorcing you. And they got divorced. And then he pursued the woman of this couple. Now, this man at least did the right thing. All of this is wrong, but he at least did the right thing. He quit the church. He resigned from the pastorate, and he's never been back in the ministry again. So, Candace, I'm sorry about that. It's, that I called you out, but still it's wrong. We need to call this out. I just don't understand how Christians can sit in a church and see their pastor commit this atrocious sin and still continue to support the pastor. I don't get it. I really don't get it. So anyway, do I apologize to Candace? Well, yes and no. Just something I wanted to talk about. So what else is going on here? Now, by the way, this is all, none of this is good. So what we're going to talk about here is this young lady. Let me bring her up here. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to resign from Congress. I'm sure most people have heard about this, unless you're living under a rock somewhere. So she is going to move on with her life. And I've talked about her before. I did a video about her several weeks ago, a month or so ago. But I like her as far as a politician. I think she broke her family as well. She committed adultery. Don't know anything about that. Now, she's not in the ministry, of course, but it's a horrible thing. But while her time in Congress has been brief, she has outperformed the majority of the males and females that are in the Republican Party as far as her voting record. And for that, I applaud her. And as far as that goes, she'll be missed. But it raises the question to me. Let me ask you your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts about women in politics? Now, I have good experience with the few women in politics that I've supported. Barbara Vukanovich, when we lived in Nevada, she did a fairly good job. Marjorie Taylor Greene. But what is going on with more and more women entering politics? Is that a good thing for the country? Let me ask you this. And I'm talking, when I say this, I'm talking to the people in my camp. I'm not talking to liberals. I mean, the liberals, if you're watching this, you probably think that committing adultery and cheating on your wife and destroying your family is fine. But I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to people in my camp. People that know the Bible at least better than most. What do you think about the increasing number of women in politics in Washington, D.C.? I'm not so sure about that. Now, is there a scripture about it? Well, we know that the scripture teaches that women are not to rule over the man. If we want to go that way about it, now, is that talking about in the church? We know it's talking about that in the church, at least. Excuse me. But in the political realm, is that what it's talking about? Well, I mean, America's not a Christian country. So can we, and there's nothing in the Constitution that says that they can't be in politics. So I went out and I asked my friend ChatGPT about this. I said, how many women currently serve in Congress and how many of those are married with children? And here's the answer that the ChatGPT gave me. Said that in the 119th Congress, which is the current Congress, there are 150 women serving, 125 women in the House, and 26 women in the Senate. Now, it couldn't tell me how many of those had children. And you say, why does that matter? Well, of course, in a common sense world, women are the upbringers of children. I find it difficult to believe that a young woman, especially of childbearing age that has children, can do both jobs effectively. I do not believe it's possible. I do not believe it's fair to the children. If mommy's gone playing politician, we had, this was 15 years ago at least, a mayoral race here in my town where I live in Arizona. And it was a woman who, by the way, she went on to win. And as far as I know, she did a good job. But I met her then he was the member of the State House of Representatives, Andy Biggs, who is now our congressman, who is going to resign that post now and run for governor of the state of Arizona. But I was invited to some meeting, ended up at his house, and she was there. She was just running for town council. And we were talking. She was a very young woman, and she had children. And I told her, ma'am, I can't support you because, and of course, she was stunned. Not like she needed my vote, but why? And I said, because you need to be home taking care of your kids. But anyway, she went on to run. I have no idea the condition of her children. They're much older now, of course, probably almost grown. I hope they're doing well. So we have all these women in politics. What is your thought about that? Now, let me just tie this in. Oh, let me show you this. Let me show you this. All right. Here we go. Women serving in the 119th Congress. And we can scroll through here. You can see it's both Democrat and Republican. This is the senators that are women. All right. You can see that. And then down in the House, there's 125. 94 Democrats, 31 Republicans. All right. What's the spread on the senator? 16 Democrat, 10 Republican. Well, it appears that that's interesting. But you have a list here of female congresswomen. I would imagine most of them have have very little or nowhere close to the voting record of a Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, the list goes on and on. All right. All those women. What would it be like? What would it be like if 435 members of the House of Representatives, what would it be like if they were all women? What happens if the senators, there are 100 of them, what happened would be if they were all women? Would it affect anything? I would tend to think that it would. What are your thoughts on that, if you have any thoughts about it at all? But then I was thinking about this. If we have women in politics at such a number, what are the numbers of those in the military? Now, it is an odd thing to me that people in my camp will defend, like it's a doctrine, the right of women to be in combat roles in the military. I understand totally and agree that there are positions in the military that women can and should serve in, but they are not combat positions. And I think that they do a wonderful job in many other areas, primarily the medical field, where nursing is a skilled trade and they do wonderful work. So I asked my friend ChatGPT again, how many are in the military? So he gave me this, and there are quite a few. This is in combat roles. I didn't ask in the military, I said in combat roles. And if you want to pause this at some point and read that, or come back and look at it again later, yeah, there's a lot of women. What would it be like if the military was made primarily of all women? Would it make a difference? Is it the right thing to do? What are your thoughts about that? So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we'll miss you. But, you know, in one way, of course, you're an older woman. I think she's 51. Her kids are grown. I hope you have a good life. We appreciate your service and wish the best for you. So, your thoughts on women in politics and in combat roles in the military. So next up, we have this story. We cut to this. You've heard about it, no doubt. Mike Pence, former vice president. No place for anti-Semitism in America today, tomorrow, or ever. Our founding fathers championed the return of the Jewish people to Israel. Did you know that? Yep, that's right. That's right, according to Mike Pence. And there is some truth to this. We're going to cover this. Yeah, our founding fathers gave us justification to support Israel. And that's what he quotes here in the article. Let's cut back to it. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. All right. No place for anti-Semitism. And down here, they highlight a quote. Centuries before the founding of a modern Israel, our founding fathers championed the return of the Jewish people to Israel and made special provision for the Jewish faith in America. Now, there's some truth to this. So, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Mr. Pence, who obviously is running for president and wants to cuddle up close to Bibi and get some votes, is coming out with this, and it sounds good on its surface, and you think, really? You mean the founders? They championed the idea of taking money from American citizens and sending it to Israel, of providing Israel with weapons to kill innocent men, women, and children? That's what the founders, they were supporting, because that's what we do now. And according to him, we have a precedent here, and the founders Well, they were the same way. That's the implication, but that is not the truth. So let me pull up this article. All right. And we go over to it. Did the founders champion the return of Jewish people to Israel? This is off a Substack. I think it's a Substack article. Yeah, it is. And you can see the name there. You can look it up yourself. I've not heard of this gentleman. But let's go down to John Adams. Pence says John Adams supported the Jews again in Judea as an independent nation. While this is true as far as it goes, there's more to this quote from Adams. Let's take a look. To Jewish writer and diplomat Mordecai Noah, Adams wrote on March 15, 1819, "For I really wish the Jews again in Judea an independent nation, for as I believe the most enlightened men of it have participated in the," that's a word I don't know what it is, "ameliorations of the philosophy of the age, once restored to an independent government and no longer persecuted, they would soon wear away some of the asperities and peculiarities of their character, possibly in time become liberal Unitarian Christians, for your Jehovah is our Jehovah, and your God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is our God." The author says, see how that changes things? Adams engaged in some stereotyping before saying Jews might eventually convert to Unitarian Christianity. Now, what is a Unitarian Christian? That's a Christian that does not believe, if you want to call them Christians, I'm not sure how that's possible. They don't believe in the Trinity. They don't believe Jesus is God. So I don't believe they're true Christians. But Adams did. But that's what he meant by that. All right, let's go back and look at some other quotes here. Elias Boudinot, who is also in the article that Pence quotes. Let's scroll down here and see what Boudinot really is saying in context. Let us then carefully attend to the word of the Lord as spoken by his prophets and watch the signs of the times, seeking to know the will of God and what he expects from those who are awakened to see their error. Much is to be done when the signal is set up for the nations, and these children of God's watchful providence shall be manifestly dissevered. They are to be converted to the faith of Christ and instructed in their glorious prerogatives and prepared and assisted to return to their own land and their ancient city, even the city of Zion, which shall become a praise in all the earth. Let not our unbelief or other irreligious conduct, with a want of a lively active faith in our Almighty Redeemer, become a stumbling block to these outcasts of Israel, wherever they may be. They will naturally look to the practice and example of those calling themselves Christians for encouragement. Who knows but God has raised up these United States in these latter days for the very purpose of accomplishing his will and bringing his beloved people to their own land. Now, that is not exactly what Pence meant. No, not at all. These two authors both are saying that, yes, let's help the Jew get back to their land and let's get them converted to Christianity. Now, here's my bug. All we see today in my camp is signs with "we support Israel" and blah 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 blah. And I've done other programs on it where I can't find anybody to come on and talk about it who reaches Jewish Americans with the gospel or tries to as missionaries. But these men, back in their time, said the main goal of Americans is this, and I am sort of paraphrasing what they're saying, is that we are to help the Jew get back to their land and to help them gain a knowledge of salvation through the Lord Jesus Christ as their Savior. That's exactly what we should be doing today. Now, they're already back in their homeland, but we don't reach them with the gospel. The Bible says to the Jew first, we are to reach them with the gospel. We don't do it. We drop the ball. We support their government and all the wickedness that goes with that. But we don't do hardly anything to reach these people with the gospel. All right. Okay. Now, what's next on my list? Yes. Very interesting. My wife pointed this out to me. By the way, my wife has brought paganism into the house today. She set up the Christmas tree. And so I Of course, I'm scared to tell her not to do that. But anyway, we have the Christmas tree set up now, and it looks actually very nice. So let's look at this article here. One of our heroes, Jane Fonda, reveals the one thing about dying she's afraid of. The star once thought she wouldn't live to 30. This is an InStyle article, and you can look it up yourself. I found it on their website. So I'm not going to read this, obviously. We're not going to spend a lot of time on Jane Fonda. But she is concerned more with leaving things undone in this life more than anything else. There's not one word, not one mention anywhere in this story about eternity, heaven or hell. Nothing. Nothing in that story about that. And that's what she needs. Typical person, typical American. Doesn't matter that she's probably rich, doesn't matter that she's famous. She's in her 80s. She knows that her life is short. She doesn't have any idea when she's going to pass away, just like the rest of us. And yet she's concerned about making sure that she doesn't leave with things unsaid and family issues not resolved. She talks about her father had regrets when he was getting up and getting ready to pass away about things he should have done with his family. No mention of eternity whatsoever. If anybody has any connection whatsoever with Jane Fonda, she needs to hear the gospel. Has she ever heard it before? I have no idea, but I would imagine in America she's heard the gospel. And of course, just like anybody else, when you go knock on their door, they don't need the gospel either. They're no different than Jane Fonda. That's just the way people are. That's the way I was. That's the way you were. No difference. It's just tragedy. It's tragic. All right, so let's look at this statement from President Trump. Now, you've probably seen this if you're on social media at all. He wrote this. And he has written other paragraphs like this about Thomas Massey, Rand Paul. And you have to ask yourself, how can the President of the United States write such childishness? I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I have talked to a friend. Let me put it this way. In 2016, on his first term, my friend unfriended me on Facebook because I would come out and ask questions about Trump. We reconnected. He saw the error of his way and refriended me. And now he's telling me, and I'm like, are you the same guy? He's bothered by what he sees here. And I appreciate that. I really do. All right, before we go to the last thing, I want to just talk about a couple of things. I've got a couple of books here I want to just talk about. This book was written by a friend of mine, James Lyman, called Outraged. And I'm going to have James on some point. We're going to talk about his book and why he wrote it, what it's about. Well, what it's about what we just talked about at the very beginning, about sexual abuse, primarily in Baptist churches. So it's an interesting book. And by the way, his examples are not just in America. Okay, this goes on everywhere, and he has it all documented in his book. If you want that book, it's on Amazon. Also, I had Mr. Paul Engel on several weeks ago. We did a story on the Constitution, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. And I ordered this booklet, How the 16th and 17th Amendments Destroyed the Republic, by Paul Engel. It's a small pamphlet. I think it was $5. It's excellent. I highly recommend that. And his other works I have not purchased yet. And as time goes on, I will buy and add those to my library. I enjoyed listening to him on our meeting. And if you haven't seen that video, go find it and watch it. It's good. And the Constitution is something we need to be educated about. And the 16th and 17th, In case you don't know, the 16th Amendment is the one where they can tax you. The 17th is where they destroy the republic by changing senators, federal senators, U.S. senators, from being selected by states and appointed by states to being elected by the general population. It has destroyed America. We're not even anywhere close to what the founders put together. Just with that one amendment. It's a terrible thing. All right. So let's close this out tonight. This is wonderful. God does miraculous things. All right. You can see that this was from Facebook. This guy went to this church. He had a cavity. Lo and behold, during the service, God fixed his cavity and gave him a gold tooth. I went and read the comments on that. And the number of people, surely they aren't serious. Surely they're just trolling. There were people on there that were believing it. One guy said, yes, that happened. Oh, that happened to my mama. Oh, she got something fixed, and she was at a church service and got healed, and this got fixed. And I don't know. What do you think about that? Thanks for tuning in to The Road to the Antichrist here on the Third Rail. I appreciate it very much. And as we get more stories that appeal to me, we'll bring them to you. But, folks, the time is tight. Another story. Let me just say this in closing. I didn't have time to go over it again, but it was online talking about Israel. We have peace in Gaza. On antiwar.com, they had a story where over 300 have been killed in Gaza, Palestinians killed since the ceasefire. And now, again, the continuing of Israel is moving in, setting up settlements in the West Bank, displacing Palestinians. This is a violation of international law. And they are slowly going to take over the West Bank. They are going to slowly get rid of all of the Palestinians, the Arabs in Gaza. And they were going to retain all of that. That is their goal. Christian, you need to stop supporting such wickedness, the murder of these innocent people. You need to get your heart right with God about that. You really do. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks so much. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.